I, 27 female, and my cousin, Sophie, 26 female, never had a good relationship, which is something our family never accepted. It certainly didn't help that she believed she was the axis Earth rotated around. So, growing up, our family would always try and deliberately push us together, even when none of us cared. Years passed, and my boyfriend and I finally decided to get married. Our family pressured me as usual into making Sophie my maid of honor. I, of course, hated the idea, knowing full well how she will act. She's always been a drama queen, but I relented and made her my maid of honor, and my two best friends my bridesmaids. The wedding day came, and I was getting ready in this fancy suite with my bridesmaids and of course Sophie. Then all of a sudden, she ran to the bathroom, which made everyone snap their heads towards her, and seconds later, she emerged, announcing that she just threw up, though admittedly none of us heard a thing, even with the door to the bathroom never closed. Then she started complaining about how she was feeling so sick. She was totally fine moments ago, so we asked her what was wrong, and that's when she told us that she was pregnant. Everyone inside the suite was surprised, but congratulations were in order. From then, she made everything about her. She would whine and order my bridesmaids around to provide her with everything she asked, while she rested on the big sofa with pillows stacked around her by us. She kept whining throughout makeup and refused to put on a dress till the last moment because it made her morning sickness worse. I felt bad for her at first, but then she just kept nagging and making things hard for everybody, that everybody, including the makeup artists, was starting to roll their eyes. I was on the verge of tears at this point because I could feel my day starting to slip away from me. The ceremony wasn't any better. My cousin made a great show of holding a non-existent baby bump and became emotional when the minister was giving a blessing to me and my husband. Everyone was focusing on her instead of us, and it felt so awful that I just wanted to flee. Right after the ceremony, we went straight to the reception, and I was already avoiding contact with Sophie. I constantly pushed myself to continue and get on with the day, encouraging myself that I was supposed to be happy because it was my day. I didn't want to show my husband how unhappy I was. Then it was time for the speeches, and at the end of Sophie's toast, in front of every family member, friend and loved one, she asked me to become her unborn child's godmother, and the hall erupted in clapping, emotional people getting up to congratulate her, etc. All the while, I sat frozen on my seat on my freaking wedding day. Every cell in my body pushed me to smile that day, but I was pissed. All attention was on her, and I couldn't help but fake every interaction I made during that time. I kept all my feelings inside. Not one in our family heard me whine or complain about her behavior. I let her be. After the wedding, my husband and I flew to Europe for our honeymoon. I finally got away from Sophie. I spent my time in Europe celebrating with my husband. When things were finally starting to clear up, my dear cousin Sophie sent me a bunch of messages, calling me out for not being happy and accusing me of being jealous of her pregnancy because I hadn't apparently looked sunny enough at the wedding. And then I hadn't taken time off from my honeymoon to inquire about her precious embryo. She called me a prick, an immature, selfish human being, and to move on from what happened, because now is the time she needs all the love and support. Everything else is secondary. It didn't help when her mom called me and scolded me for being immature towards Sophie and not being the bigger person in our situation. I don't even understand what they expect me to do. I'm just really confused. Am I the a-hole for not apparently moving on? Update. So I decided to cut myself from my cousin and some of the other family who were being toxic about the whole thing. I focused on myself and my husband. Although I would exchange small messages with my family, checking them in and greeting them while there were special occasions. Months went by like that, and I was happy. One day, Sophie reached out to me, inviting me to her baby shower. She wanted to move forward and patch things between us, and I accepted. I went to her baby shower with my husband. Everyone was a little surprised to see my husband and me that day. and it looked like they didn't expect us to come. Sophie happily welcomed us inside, and we walked to where the rest of our family was sitting. Sophie then asked me in front of everyone why I was still not pregnant, as if it's been years since we got married. I didn't give her an answer. Instead, I diverted her attention to something else to avoid being questioned further about the topic. Later, I proposed a toast to Sophie, and at the end, I requested her to be the godmother of my child. Everyone was so surprised that they all stood up to greet and congratulate me on the good news. Some of the invites kept clapping their hands, and everyone was just so happy for me. All except one, Sophie. Sophie was furious. She didn't like how I took the spotlight away from her. Sophie hated the spectacle, and she made sure everyone heard how mad she was. She lashed out at me. Like before, she called me names and accused me of being selfish and heartless for ruining her day. She said that I ruined her day. My husband and I left the place, freeing ourselves from all the drama Sophie was so willing to give. Since then, I have never associated myself or my family with her. From time to time, I still receive calls from the family to tell me how awful I was for acting the way I did. I find them funny. OP, you should find the family funny because they are. So, your cousin could ask you to be her unborn child's godmother on your wedding day, but you can't ask her to be yours on her baby shower? Your cousin needs help, and I feel like all your family does is enable her. It's a good thing to not associate with any of them anymore. They are dramas, and you don't need that kind of drama in your life. Just live in peace with your husband. Story 2. Let me start off by saying, I do love my brother and my nephew. My brother, 27 male, and I, 25 female, used to be really close until he moved 8 hours away. But we are still good friends. We share the same sense of humor, and even though we've had our rough times, we're both the types of people to get over things very quickly and never bring it up again. Almost 7 years ago, he had my niece by his ex-wife, whom I love very much. She's the sweetest thing in the world, and she and I are very close to each other. She's a very independent child who, being an only child, has learned to entertain herself, but loves the company of others. She's also extremely smart with an excellent memory, and she loves sharing my interests, such as superheroes and art. My niece is also autistic. It's a mild form of autism. She's just at a slower pace than most children in both her motor skills and speech. And when she's really happy or excited, she'll almost lose control of her body movements. I still love her to pieces, and she's completely changed my opinion about the possibility of having a child someday. I always believed that because of my upbringing, I wouldn't make a good mother, but the way she responds to me makes me think otherwise. When my former sister-in-law found out she was pregnant with my niece and told my brother, he was afraid because he wasn't ready, but he never showed it. He had everyone believing he was going to be there for my niece no matter what, and that his habits, won't go into detail, but he was basically extremely deceptive, were gone. Once the baby was born, he was there for her for around the first few months, but then he disappeared. He didn't disappear from our lives completely, but he had nothing to do with my niece. He moved hours away from both of them and started dating other women. During this time, he would hardly call to talk to his daughter, wouldn't send money, and would get upset when people would speak to him about his responsibilities as a father. My ex-sister-in-law would leave everyone behind and move so that their daughter could be around him. But every time she'd move within a good distance of my brother, he would move again. Mind you, she did not move near him in hopes of them being a family again. She only did it for the sake of my niece. As my niece got older and was becoming more aware of what my brother was doing, she started to resent him. She would never want to talk to him over the phone and would cry and have a tantrum when her mother would attempt to let her see my brother. I should mention that since I met my former sister-in-law, we clicked instantly and are still best friends. No matter what has happened between her and my brother, our friendship never changed, and she never withheld contact from me or anyone in the family when we wanted to speak to or see my niece. On to the situation at hand. About a year and a half ago, my brother met his current girlfriend on a website and they've been together since. She has a daughter who is the same age as my niece. And since she is super close to her daughter and treats her well, my brother started coming around and having more contact with my niece. It's almost like he wanted to play the role of a good father, since his girlfriend was a good mother. He also thought it would bring them even closer if their daughters formed a bond. Because of this, my brother arranged with my niece's mom that he would take her every weekend. However, my niece has told me multiple times that whenever she would go see her dad, he would pick her up and would never even spend time with her. He would just tell her to play with his girlfriend's daughter, we'll call her Kate, and never spent any time with her. Kate is also very mean to my niece. As I stated earlier, my niece is at a slower pace than other children and needs help with things like tying her shoes or putting her clothes on properly, and even doing childlike things such as dressing up her dolls or playing catch. My brother and his girlfriend have given Kate permission to help my niece with these things, in turn making Kate feel like she's better than my niece. I have spoken with them about this many times, but they excuse this as not having time to help my niece, and it's just easier if Kate does it. My niece has cried to me before that she doesn't like going to see her dad because he never spends time with her and she constantly feels left out. Also, because Kate is a normal child, my brother treats her way differently than he treats his own daughter. This, of course, frustrates me to no end. Like most men, my brother has always wanted a boy. 2 months ago, he got his wish when his current girlfriend had their son. Now he's non-stop talking about how much he loves his son and buys him expensive clothes and shoes. He's a baby. He doesn't need name brand clothes. And every day he'll send tons of pictures to me of his son and constantly talks about how they look exactly alike. He was never like this when my niece was born. In fact, by 2 months old, my brother already bailed on her. Every conversation he's constantly talking about him. And I know he's excited, but he almost acts like my niece doesn't even exist. The problem I have is, am I wrong in feeling resentful towards my brother? I do love my nephew, but I can't help but think of my niece every time I look at pictures of my brother and nephew. I know exactly what it's like to be different and just want to fit in. I know the feeling of being abandoned and not feeling good enough for someone's affections and being pushed aside and forgotten. These are feelings I know my niece has, and she shouldn't feel like this just because of her father's actions. Am I wrong for feeling bitter towards him for this? Am I being too emotional and protective over my niece?